Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a high-stakes, multi-layered race that's quietly unfolding all over the globe. We're looking at the rapidly escalating competition between quantum attackers, the offense, and enterprise defenders. And look, this isn't just your standard tech upgrade or a simple software patch. We are talking about a fundamental structural shift in how we secure literally every piece of data on the internet. As you'll see, the bottlenecks in this race aren't just in the code. They're rooted in corporate inertia and, incredibly enough, in nuclear physics.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the accelerating quantum threat, look at why the math is ready, and then tackle the enterprise adoption bottleneck. After that, we'll hit a pretty wild physics plot twist regarding helium-3, look at the secondary risks, and finally, map out how to build true crypto agility.
All right, Chapter 1, the accelerating quantum threat and why our timeline is shrinking. For the longest time, a quantum computer breaking our encryption felt like, well, distant sci-fi. But the offense in this race just found another gear. Recent research published by Google showed that the estimated number of logical qubits needed to break 256-bit elliptic curve cryptography has been slashed. They essentially found a wildly efficient way to pick our digital locks. So that relaxed 10-year grace period everyone in the industry was banking on, yeah, it's totally gone. We went from assuming a massive machine would take years to crack encryption to realizing a smaller one could pull it off in minutes. So what does this all mean? The crucial point here is that 2029 to 2030 window. That's our new, highly accelerated threat horizon. Serious voices in cryptography are now pointing to the end of this decade, not the mid-2030s like everyone assumed just a couple of years ago, for when a working quantum attack machine could plausibly arrive. The timeline just shrank dramatically. The defense's window to get it together is closing really fast. Which brings us to Chapter 2, the math is ready, defense in the silicon. Okay, the good news. Our defensive playbook isn't empty, and the new post-quantum math is, for the most part, ready to go. NIST has set hard deadlines to deprecate the old math by 2030, and the replacements are surprisingly slick. Take MLChem and MLDSA, our primary lattice-based standard algorithms. They are incredibly lightweight. MLChem is actually about 17 times more energy efficient than the older elliptic curves it's replacing, and the handshake overhead is basically negligible for a normal web app. But we also have SLHDSA. This one is our hash-based fallback hedge. It's the backup plan, and it carries a massive bandwidth and storage penalty. We're talking signatures that are 10 to 40 times larger. Huge data centers might not sweat this, but constrained devices with long lifespans, like in automotive, aerospace, or industrial sensors, they are absolutely going to feel that massive overhead.
But let's be realistic here. The core standards are set, sure, but the math isn't totally frictionless yet. NIST locked in MLChem and MLDSA in 2024, but as we're seeing right now, engineers are still spotting edge cases a year and a half later. We're currently tracking things like rejection sampling rate mismatches, newly rarefied bugs and optimized verifiers, and heavy scrutiny over claimed attacks on newer signature candidates like Hawk. Plus, there's just a ton of noise in the forums from unsolicited cryptographic pitches. The math is ready to deploy, but deploying brand new cryptography is always going to be a slightly bumpy road.
Moving on to Chapter 3, the enterprise adoption bottleneck, and why the defense is moving so slow. Here is the harsh reality of this race. The bottleneck actually isn't the cryptography itself. The math is moving fast, but enterprise migration, it's crawling. Right now, only 13% of organizations have moved post-quantum cryptography into production. Another 27% are planning or testing, but a whopping 60% haven't even meaningfully started. Remember that 2029 threat timeline we anchored earlier? Yeah, looking at these numbers, the world is terrifyingly behind schedule. So why are we lagging? Well, enterprise migrations realistically take 8 to 15 years to complete. Modern IT is so sprawling and decentralized that companies don't even have a complete inventory of where their vulnerable cryptography lives. On top of that, 81% of organizations are reporting that their vendors and hardware security modules, their HSMs, just aren't ready for PQC integration yet. You add in a severe global skills shortage that severely limits how fast a company can absorb these changes, plus deep supply chain exposures, and it becomes a mathematical certainty. If a company starts migrating in 2026, they literally will not finish until the early 2030s. Let's pivot to Chapter 4, the helium-3 plot twist. This is a massive physics choke point. Now, as much as defenders are struggling, the quantum attackers are hitting a massive physical brick wall of their own. We're shifting from software bottlenecks to physical ones.
To scale up a superconducting quantum computer, which is the kind that breaks encryption, the offense needs a highly specialized piece of equipment called a dilution refrigerator. You don't just buy these off the shelf. They cost $1 to $5 million each, and they come with 6 to 12 months supply chain lead times. It's a huge hardware constraint for the attacker. But actually, the real problem isn't the fridge itself. It's what goes inside it. The price difference here is just jaw-dropping. Ordinary helium-4 costs about $5 to $10 a liter. But to run these dilution refrigerators, you need a specific isotope called helium-3. And that costs between $1,900 and $2,600 per liter. Why? Because helium-3 doesn't just naturally exist in meaningful amounts. It's a finite, highly scarce byproduct of decaying tritium from nuclear weapons programs. It is a structural scarcity, and right now, the US has no clear plan to fix this supply chain at the scale required for tens of thousands of quantum computers. Which brings us to an incredible, almost ironic silver lining. The attacker is bottlenecked by the availability of a literal nuclear weapons byproduct. Meanwhile, the defender's new PQC hardware runs on perfectly normal, ordinary CMOS silicon. Sure, there's some chip fab congestion from the AI boom, but that's a solvable industrial problem. This physics choke point on helium-3 is inadvertently slamming the brakes on the offense, and quite literally buying the world time to migrate our defenses. All right, Chapter 5, the secondary risks, the unknown unknowns. Even with that bot time, ripping out and replacing the foundational cryptography of the entire internet is not a consequence-free action. We are stepping into the territory of unknown unknowns. If we implement our agile cryptography poorly, attackers can force our systems into downgrade attacks, pushing us back to vulnerable legacy math. There's also a massive mathematical monoculture risk. Our primary new standard, lattice math, it just hasn't been tested by cryptanalysts for as many decades as our old math. If someone finds a flaw in lattices tomorrow, our primary defense collapses. And that is exactly why keeping that bulky SLH-DSA hash-based algorithm as a backup is absolutely crucial. Throw in global regulatory fragmentation, like the EU and US having different deadlines, plus the physical stress of pushing much larger cryptographic payloads through decades-old SCADA systems or satellites, and you're looking at a minefield of secondary risks. Quick side note before we move to the solution. I want to clear up a common distraction, QKD, or quantum key distribution. You'll probably hear this mentioned a lot. QKD offers incredible information-theoretic security using quantum mechanics itself. But because of its sheer cost and scaling limits, it is strictly a complement for ultra-high-value point-to-point links. Think interbank settlements or government backbones. It is absolutely not an internet-scale replacement for PQC. For our sprawling enterprise networks, PQC is the only viable path forward. Finally, Chapter 6, Building Crypto Agility, the Strategic Playbook. Our mental model for this entire transition needs to shift. We can't just pick an algorithm. We have to build robust, flexible infrastructure. Here's the playbook, prioritized. Number 1, triage by data lifetime. Protect the secrets first that still need to be confidential past 2032. Number 2, build crypto agility as infrastructure. Think of your cryptography like Lego blocks that you can easily swap out rather than supergluing an algorithm into your code. Third, deliberately maintain algorithmic diversity to avoid that monoculture risk. Fourth, engage your hardware vendors today because physical hardware lead times are the long pole in the tent. And lastly, treat that helium-3 attacker bottleneck as bot time, not an excuse to procrastinate. I want to leave you with this provocative thought. Whatever math we pick today will eventually be broken and need replacing again, whether that's by a classical breakthrough or a quantum one. The biggest risk isn't choosing the wrong algorithm today. The biggest risk is treating this transition as a one-time checkbox. Are you treating quantum migration as a checkbox, or are you building an ongoing capability to adapt? Thanks for diving into this complex roadmap with me. Keep your systems agile and keep learning.